Corsets are beautiful but restricting. Long skirts are elegant but impractical. Clothes are fun to wear, but they're political. Even your bubblegum crop top with a lettuce hem from Shein is political. You might not have a secret agenda, but your closet definitely does. What you adorn yourself with tells the world everything it needs to know about you. Everything is available to everyone now thanks to fast fashion and cheap labor, but it wasn't always like this. Fashion has been dictating history for a long time. We just need to take a closer look. Let's talk about sumptuary laws and how governments used fashion to control the masses. Basically, the government or whoever was in charge made rules about what clothes you were allowed to wear depending on who you were, your social class, how rich you were, even what job you had. So what did fashion have to do with it? Well, fashion is all about what we wear, and these laws were all about controlling exactly that. The main point was to make sure everyone knew who was important. Rich and powerful people could wear the most expensive of fabrics like silk, thanks to Queen Elizabeth I's laws. And even certain colors were reserved for high-ranking individuals. You have to remember that before the Industrial Revolution, there were no mass production factories for clothes. Each garment was hand-sewn and hand-dyed. Even these dyes were expensive and difficult to find. Life just wasn't as easy back then. Take the Romans, for example. Only the elite of Roman society, particularly senators and emperors, were permitted to wear garments dyed with Tyrian purple. This vibrant and expensive dye, extracted from shellfish, became an unmistakable symbol of high status and power. Wearing it, if you were not of the designated rank, could carry serious consequences. As for fabrics, Queen Elizabeth I's sumptuary laws were very specific about who could wear luxurious fabrics and colors. For instance, only the royal family could wear silk of the color purple, cloth of gold, and sable fur. Higher nobility had access to other rich materials like velvet and satin, while those of lower social standing were restricted to coarser fabrics and less vibrant colors. The very fabric and hue of your clothing immediately signaled your place in the rigid social hierarchy. That's why it's so easy to tell who was poor and who was rich in the period dramas and movies. Speaking of period dramas, one garment that's synonymous with a certain era is the corset. Those corsets, however pretty, were still incredibly constricting. It enforced an idealized, often unhealthy feminine silhouette characterized by a tiny waist, pushing the bust and hips into exaggerated curves. This hyper-focus on the body and complete disregard for movement practically disabled women from doing anything. They were turned into perfectly laced-up trophies. The justification for keeping women in these metaphorical shackles made it easy to deem them as too delicate and fragile for intellectual pursuits, physical labor, or political engagement. While the reasoning behind these restrictions may not be obvious at first glance, the impracticality of corsets as everyday garments was unmistakable. And when the Victorian women realized this, they started the Rational Dress Society in London in 1881. This movement arose from growing concerns among women about the impracticality, discomfort, and detrimental health effects of prevailing fashions, particularly the tightly laced corset, heavy skirts, and restrictive garments. The Rational Dress Society specifically aimed to promote clothing based on factors of health, comfort, and freedom of movement, advocating for styles that would allow women to participate more fully in physical activities and public life without being hindered by their attire. They actively campaigned against the corset, high-heeled shoes, and excessively weighted skirts. Instead, they championed clothing that distributed weight evenly, provided freedom of movement, and prioritized practicality alongside aesthetic considerations. Because after all, looking good has always been a priority. Without these women, we wouldn't have women in trousers. Now we have clothing attire for lounging in the house, for sports and compression garments that look silly but get the job done. What our society deems important changes over time, and if you look closer at the seams, it all starts to make sense. You can literally rewrite history with just a needle and a thread. In fact, people have woven secret messages into clothing to communicate secretly. The very pattern of a garment can give you guarded intel about someone. Take the tartan pattern of the Scottish kilts, for example. Initially, tartans were likely regional, with patterns and colors determined by locally available dyes and weaving traditions. However, their significance took on a strong political dimension, particularly during and after the Jacobite uprisings in the 17th and 18th centuries. The distinct patterns of different clans became symbols of Scottish identity and, crucially, of defiance against English rule. The English would go on to ban these tartans and other clothes that looked Scottish to me in the Dress Act of 1746. They wanted to control the people and break their strength that came from numbers. Instead of extinguishing the association of tartans with Scottish identity and resistance, the ban amplified it. The specific patterns evolved into stronger emblems of clan loyalty and a shared sense of resistance against external control. The versatility of denim has always attracted people who value making a statement. They're simple enough to be customized, so customizable that the punks took it themselves to make it their own during the 1970s. Around this time, the punk rock movement adopted ripped and intentionally distressed denim as a key element of their anti-establishment aesthetic. For punks, tearing and customizing their jeans was a deliberate act of aggression against mainstream fashion and societal norms. This raw and deliberately unfashionable style became a visual representation of their anger, frustration, and rejection of conventional beauty standards. The hippies were more subtle about their expression, but the punks were aggressive and angry. The denim withstood it all regardless of the kind of expression it was used for. Time and time again, we've used clothes to tell a story, and we'll continue to do it. Fashion is woven into the culture, history, and the very essence of being.